Although that coming to the marae is scary, you know, we know this. Some of us assume that it's easy for people to come onto the marae. It's not easy if you don't have your reo. It's not easy if you don't know kawa. It's not easy if you don't know tikanga. It's very, we know this experience. So it's something that we've worked on over the years here in terms of embracing our people, making them feel more comfortable. And that's why, as I said, so proud of the work that they do. So it might be scary, but I assure you, once you walk through the gates, you're welcome, you're part of what we are here, and you'll see, like many visitors before, that we share a belief. This marae shares a belief in making Aotearoa a better country for all our kids and our whānau to belong to. So that's why I wanted the kaupapa here, and I wanted to talk about the next steps we want to take in moving forward with our commitment to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. See, like ngā whare wātea, the declaration, I suppose, can be a bit scary to people who don't know about the history, the fight, the fight for justice in terms of Indigenous people. But once we talk about it together, wānanga, argue about it back and forth, it will become a place where talking about self-determination is welcomed, a place we can share our aspirations and debate our future. It will be something that brings us together as a country. The declaration, as Claire and Bill know, was never meant to divide us. It's not a tool for separatism. It's not something to be afraid of. That's what made the recent uproar and nonsense both confusing and disappointing. Confusing because we were so proud when Dr. Peter Sharples signed the agreement when the national government committed to developing a plan to implement it. And disappointing that there's been a U-turn from that more positive approach to Indigenous rights and the continuation and expansion of work that governments of both colours, red and blue, have been working on for years. So today is my intention to make clear the steps the government will take to fulfil our obligations under the declaration as signed by Dr. Peter Sharples and agreed to by the previous national government. And I take that opportunity to thank Peter for his commitment and his mahi. I saw him on the news, I think, last night as he was ecstatic when he, and you would remember too, Veronica would remember too, who runs our whānau order setup and was Peter Sharples' former secretary. And he was ecstatic, I think, when he was able to get this across the line in terms of the country and in terms of what we were doing internationally. The national government in 2010 said the government's decision to formalise its support for the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People will help to restore New Zealand's mana in addressing Indigenous rights. I agree with that. I believe that the declaration, the conversations we will all have together will improve outcomes for all of New Zealand, just like they have when we have had these sort of conversations before. And we aren't alone. We're not alone in this. 148 other countries have also signed up to the declaration and also believe that it will improve outcomes for their own people, and like us are taking steps to put in place plans to honour the commitments they signed up to. The declaration contains 46 articles. They cover a number of issues from health and education, history and land, and it even looks at Indigenous rights to their own media. Within it, it says we need to recognise the urgent need to respect and promote the inherent rights of Indigenous peoples, which derive from their political, economic and social structures and from their cultures, spiritual traditions, histories and philosophies, especially their rights to their lands, territories and resources. I'm proud to be part of a government that has already put these words into action and continues to build on commitments this government and previous governments have made as part of our obligations to Te Treaty and our belief in strengthening our Māori Crown partnerships. Initiatives like whānau order, which is so prevalent in terms of Te Ao Māori. Our treaty settlement framework and the historic settlements in Te Uruwera and the Whanganui River. The establishment of Te Arawhiti, The work of my organisation, my agency, Te Puni Kōkiri, which does some tremendous work, particularly in the regions. Te Ture mo te reo Māori is a partnership approach to language revitalisation, so our language can rightfully thrive in our communities and homes. The government focuses on delivering health, housing and education, the establishment of the Māori Health Authority, teaching New Zealand history in schools, celebrating Matariki with a public holiday, and those are just a handful of examples. These are good things. Many of these things are popular. They make us a better country. And our plan for the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People will be built on this work to keep building to make us better. But first we need to talk, because kōrero, that's what it's all about going forward. So today I'm officially announcing the next stage of our journey. As many of you will know, work was underway under both the National Party and Labour on the development of a declaration plan. Like for a lot of things, COVID slowed down the work, but we're now in a position to get things moving again. Cabinet signed off on a two-step engagement process to develop the declaration plan. The first step is targeted engagement with key iwi and significant Māori organisations to inform the process for the development of a declaration plan. And the second step is wider public consultation on a draft declaration plan. I will work with Poutikanga representatives of the National Iwi Chairs Forum to help inform the first phase. In parallel with that work, I will also engage with a small group of independent legal experts with links to the New Zealand Human Rights Commission and expertise in public law. We want to start the conversations about the declaration firstly with Māori. It's not racist or separatist. It is called the Indigenous Declaration, so it probably makes sense to talk with the Indigenous people first. The declaration, as I said, is so important, and developing a declaration plan will need to be in partnership with Māori, and any mahi we will do has to be consistent with Te Treaty o Waitangi. The aim is to develop a draft declaration plan by the end of this year to take to a wider consultation in 2022. Following this wider public consultation, we'll look to sign off on a final plan by the end of 2022. The second part of the process is when we need to hear from all New Zealanders, because ultimately it's about all of us. We need to hear from everyone, their thoughts, their ideas, their dreams and aspirations before we map out a pathway which shows us how, as a country, we will get there. Now, I know there'll be moans and complaints about the process and the strategy, but the key to this is that everybody will get buy-in. But first of all, we must talk with our people. We must give them the opportunity, because the Indigenous experience, our Indigenous experience, is incredibly important. What have we learnt? What have we seen? What do we want? And Māori will have their opportunity over the next 6 months. And I'm looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to the second part, when all New Zealanders get to contribute. It would be easy to ignore the rest of New Zealand. That's certainly never been our intention or our strategy. Some of our people with different views think that maybe we should just talk with Māori. That's unrealistic. That's not right. Because Pākehā people are very much also a part of this country. And we can't operate like Pākehā people are not here. They are our partners. They are a treaty partner. They must have an opportunity to contribute too. Otherwise, you could get a few problems in different households, couldn't you? If you just had one person who was being consulted and the other one who's been totally left out. So we'll be going down that track. But first and foremost, we'll deal with the Indigenous obligation. And there's a lot I think we can share with the world. People say to me, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do this whole declaration thing? Because we are an Indigenous people who are doing things that many other Indigenous people don't do. We have settlement processes in place, we have contracts in place, we have a government that works closely with us, more so than any other governments around the world. And we want to share that experience. The Indigenous experience is so important that we should be sharing it with other groups. I mean, for goodness sake, we just heard about the horror in Canada, didn't we? Where we had kids buried under the floor at local schoolhouses. You hear about Indigenous horrors everywhere. The Indigenous experience is similar all around the world, and Indigenous people lead all the worst statistics. So it's only right that Indigenous people share experiences, and we can also talk about where we're at. Some would say we're not in a very good position, and there'll be varying views on that, but it's important we reflect where we are so that we can show others how far we've come and how much more we have to go. It's incredibly important. Now, this approach is consistent with the advice of the Technical Working Group, guidance from the United Nations Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and our own best practice guidelines for engagement with Māori. Now, I want to be clear. I want to be clear about He Puapua. He Puapua was incredibly important. And Claire, where are you, Claire? I want to see you again. Claire and Bill and Tamati and our crew who are here. I want to mihi to you for that work that was done. It certainly got a lot of people talking, didn't it? Had them talking everywhere and talking out at us. But I have to be clear to everyone, and no disrespect to the He Puapua crew, because you did some wonderful work. But He Puapua is not the plan. He Puapua is not the plan. It is a collection of ideas, suggestions, aspirations, and hopes for Māori. Something to add to our discussions. It was provocative, and it should have been provocative. And it has been the catalyst in terms of where we are today. And I thank the group, I thank the He Puapua group for your contribution and the hard work that you've put into this report. Thank you very much. Mihi nui kia koutou. However, as I said, He Puapua is not government policy. The group who put this together probably know this more than I do. And I'm really pleased with the mahi and the opportunity that they have presented. And from our government perspective, we're not advancing the He Puapua report anymore. We have it. We want to learn from it, but it will be available for people going forward. The questions, of course, will be many, and I'll be answering a Q&A session after this. Are you up for constitutional change? Are there questions about a Māori parliament? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Are Māori going to get special rights? All those sort of questions have been coming forward over the last 2 or 3 months as critics have been trying to water down the process or taint our process. And I heard Claire this morning with Mike Hoskins, and that was an excellent interview. It's not about the Māori takeover. I know some of our people do want to take over, but kei te pai. I get that. It's not about that. It's about setting an agenda in terms of the years coming forward. What is our identity? Who are we as New Zealanders? What place does Māori, te ao Māori, play in this country? Where does the language fit in? What do we regard ourselves as? Is the Republic an argument? Where does the treaty fit in? So many questions that are on the table that we should have the right to go through this process and come up with some answers. So I'm just really pleased that we've brought in as a government in terms of the process going forward. Because before we put a plan in place, we must all have a say in what the plan looks like. So that plan is going to be really, really important over the next few months. So this is a good conversation to have. It's about kōrero, it's about debate. Some say it might be scary, it might be challenging, but I promise you, take the first step, walk through the gates, because ultimately it will be rewarding, just like you've done here at Ngā Whare Wātea today. Bring your thoughts about self-determination, about Māori housing and health. Bring your concerns, your aspirations, your dreams, and let's talk. You'll be welcomed, you'll be heard, and we can keep moving forward as a nation, which I'm sure